Welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. The Pharmacy Leaders Podcast is a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, with interviews and advice on building your professional network, brand, and a purposeful second income from students, residents, and innovative professionals.
Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast. I wanted to first tell you about some free audiobook codes. I put at least 300 up on this website, memorizingpharm.com/free book codes. That's memorizingpharm.com/free book codes. And I've written or published 14 books. So you got a big selection in 4 different big categories. So there's career, residency, entrepreneurship, pharmacology in the top 200, pharmacotherapy case studies, and then college admissions if you're interested in getting into pharmacy, nursing, med school. I've got a number of things on getting in there. And I'm going to talk about a couple of the books while I'm talking about this podcast episode. So today I wanted to talk about this document, and I can't cite it because I'm not the one that's going to be, how do I put it? The document's closed. You can't have access to it unless you are an AJHP subscriber. But it is strategic planning advice for pharmacy departments and hospital and health systems. It's the ASHP Foundation Pharmacy Forecast 2019. And I just want to talk about 2 topics that they talk about. The first topic is whether you need a residency or not, or whether they think you need a residency. And one of the questions has to do with, will 90% of the jobs at the hospital require a PGY1? And then, they make their opinion, and the people that make their opinion are 300 to 350. I can't remember the number. I know they doubled it. People that are respected and know about these things. And they basically say, okay, well, we think this or we think that. But the important thing to know is that they're going in that direction, that you need a PGY1 to get these hospital jobs. And if the associations want it that way, then, obviously it'll happen that way. And we know from this year that there were 3,000 people who wanted the residency that didn't get it. Now, what's going to happen with the job market as we kind of continue to move forward? And I want to kind of give you a little bit of insight on what's happening. So if you go to Pharmacy is Right for Me, maybe it's a website that you saw when you came in as a potential student. And under the Pcat, it says, do all pharmacy schools require the Pcat for admission? It says no, more than 85% do, but not all of them. But if you look, schools have dropped the Pcat, and this is the PharmCAS website that you can go to, that you probably went to, and you can sort and say, well, I want a school that doesn't offer the Pcat, or I don't care if there's a Pcat, I'll take it. And right now it's about 50-50. So it's happened so quickly that people have dropped the Pcat, they didn't have time to update the website, but basically I think it's around 55% of schools require the Pcat now, or at least in the PharmCAS. So that's down about 30%. So that barrier to entry, do I have to take the test? No, you just do your pre-pharm requirements, get into the PharmCAS, and do the things that they require you to do to get an acceptance. So what does that mean in terms of jobs? Well, the ASHP document for the last 2 years at least, or last year I can cite because that one's now available, basically said, hey, you've got to stop graduating so many students. And let's see what happened. Let's see if, the schools are listening to what ASHP has to say. So what I've got here is an Excel spreadsheet, and I should probably make it bigger if it's going to be on a YouTube video. So let's boost this up to like 36 or something like that. Yeah, that's a little bit bigger. Okay. So you can see that the number of applicants has gone down. It hasn't gone down tremendously. The number of applications has gone down tremendously. I want to say it was down about 10,000 this year from last year to this year. But students are just applying to fewer schools. They're going to schools that are closer to them, and the average person applies to between 2 and 3 schools, closer to 3. And if you look at this, you see, okay, well, 16.8, 16.3, about the same, 16.2, 15.8. And so if we subtract about 4%, we get to about 15.2, and that's about what's happening, is, somewhere around 400, 500 fewer than last year. But this is what's kind of startling, is that the number of accepted applicants, even though the number of applicants has gone down by 1,000, the number of accepted applicants has not changed a bit. So the average here is 13,106. And what's happening is with new schools, with all the schools, basically the number of people they get in doesn't change. So if you're looking for any sharp decrease in the number of pharmacy graduates, I don't think it's going to happen. There was another question on that ASHP thing that says, do you think pharmacy schools are going to go down in number by about 10%? And I want to say it was like 50-50 or something like that, where half said sure, half said no. But I would say that the number of graduates based on this will not go down much at all over the next 5 years. And what does that mean for the market? Well, the number of people coming from pharmacy school, or the supply of graduates, is going to not change, I don't think. And I don't know if the number of jobs is going to increase and so forth. But what happens then is, if you continue to accept the same number of applicants from a diminishing or pool of applicants is getting smaller, means that the number that are not accepted changes every year by a lot. So to have 1,000 fewer applicants and the same number of accepted applicants means that 1,000 more people were accepted than would have been accepted last year. And it's a little bit more clear when you look at the acceptance rates. So 77, 79, 81, 82. And we're kind of getting to that point where they're running out of qualified applicants to get into these schools. And if you went by what was last year, so the difference between last year and this year was about 1.3%, something like that. So you'd go up to 84%. But to maintain this number of accepted applicants, you would have to push it up to 86%. So my prediction is that the application acceptance rate is going to be between 84 and 86% this year, to maintain somewhere near the number of accepted applicants that schools have had before. Okay. So what does that mean for you? Well, that means as more and more people, if the job market doesn't get better and fewer people have options outside of residency, then residency is a must. I'm not saying that you're necessarily going to get one. I'm just saying that it's a lot easier to apply for something that has a 50-50 shot than something that has, we had a podcast episode where, there were like 100 applications for whatever number of spots. So, or for like one spot in some retail environment. So what does that mean? Well, let's kind of talk to some of the influencers out there, or see what they're talking about. And a video that Brian Fung just shared on June 8th, so today's the 12th, is about changing the social norms around pharmacy residencies. And it's funny because he did 2 pharmacy residencies and he did the scramble. But he is a firm proponent that you don't need a residency to be successful. And I'm not disagreeing, because I didn't complete a residency and I love my career. I am phenomenally excited by coming to work every day and doing the things that I do. And I am just not interested in clinical. And that is, like an anathema. Like, what do you mean you're not interested in clinical? You can't be a pharmacist if you're not interested in clinical. Well, that's like trying to tell, Michael Crichton, who is a physician, you're not really being a regular doctor. You should be a regular doctor. You should not be writing dramas like ER, and you should not be writing all these books. You should be a regular doctor. So I would, first of all, definitely recommend Brian's video. It's just like 6 minutes, but changing the social norms around pharmacy residencies. And I know he's working with another Tony, I think it's Tony Dow, but they're working at Pharmacy IT Me. So instead of Pharmacy for Me or Farm for Me, whatever that website is, these guys are talking about IT and the opportunities that are there. And Dalton Fabian, who I've talked to a couple of times, who's a Drake grad, is also in IT, and certainly an opportunity and a place that you can go to. Now, I did write the book, Finding a Unicorn Job for Pharmacists. There should be some free codes on that website that I showed you that you can get this book and kind of listen to it. And there's 125, whether pharmacy students or pharmacists that are working, but most of them have a twist to their story that really kind of makes it like, really? I didn't know that. So Core Consult RX, for example, Mike Corvino, he has, teaching PA students at a PA school in pharmacology or pharmacotherapy, and he's also, I think he's ambulatory care, but a clinical pharmacist for sure, using evidence-based practice, and he did not complete a residency. Same thing with MedEd 101's Eric Christianson, who many of you rely on for NAPLEX and BCPS. So the guy who is best in the country at teaching BCPS doesn't have a residency. So the idea that you need a residency to succeed is not true. But this is the thing. It's a lot easier to get a residency with a 50-50 shot than it is to go against the tide. And so that's why I wrote the book. You may be able to get it free with the audiobook codes. I know Audible will give you a free one if you've never been with them before, or it's like $7.50 as an audiobook. One person that I really admire is RX Ashley. We had a great talk on the Pharmacy Podcast Network, if you want to listen to that. But I am time-bound and place-bound in my job. That is, that I have a family and I can only work certain hours. I have to support my wife's job in that I take the kids to school most mornings and I pick them up most evenings. And, if she has to stay late or she's out of town, then I need to, and this is new to her job, but I need to be available to do that, or if the kids are sick, and I certainly still do the 20%, and she's 80%. She's still a rock star. But my job in itself has to be flexible. And RX Ashley has gone through the same thing in kind of an inverse, where her husband moves around a lot, and she had to create something that was very flexible. And hopefully with this last move, she said that she looks like she's going to be around for a while. But I just love her new branding, which is build clarity in your career. And I think that's the most important thing you can do in this. If you're at P4 and P3, what you're really trying to do is build clarity. So if you're in IT, listen to those guys. If you want to be in evidence-based medicine doing residency, sure. But you really want to have a plan B, because those 3,000 people that didn't get residencies, I know that most of them didn't really have a chance and didn't really think about a backup plan, because nobody really wants to think that they're not going to get it. But also, you think things are going well, and it's tough to realize just how competitive it is. So on that line, going to kind of the residency, TLDR Pharmacy by far is my favorite blog in terms of getting that kind of content. He has Master the Match, which is the absolute best guide for residency. But he also has an MPJE cheat sheet, and if you're on his email list, I think he's he sent you something out about this. But for $19, the MPJE is so much harder than the NAPLEX, so much harder, and often makes no sense. And I'm just telling you, you do not want to have that conversation with your residency director or your boss saying, hey, I didn't pass the MPJE, but I did pass the NAPLEX. There might be some forgiveness there, but I can tell you right now, I talked to a supervisor who said we just had to let 2 people go. And I was like, oh, what, were they stealing or something like that? It's like, no, they didn't pass the MPJE. It's like, oh. So substitutes are there. People are looking for jobs, and they can get a person and if they needed someone to fill that opening right away, then your contract, which might say you have to be licensed in X number of days, unfortunately is going to expire. And for $19, it's one of the best ways to organize what you're trying to do for MPJE. And I wrote the 100 Strong Residency Interviews, Questions, Answers, and Rationales. It's $5 as an audiobook. You really want to start listening to it during APPEs and not when you're just getting into residency season, because I can tell you how many people we have right now that are already kind of continuing to get the book. And there are people that are starting now, and they're getting ready for residency season, and they are out to crush you. They are out to make sure that they get their residency. And I tell you what, if you haven't been to mid-year and you go to that showcase, you're going to exactly understand just how competitive your fellow residency applicants are going to be. So for $5, I tell you, it's absolutely worth it. Do get that. And then you may be able to get one of the free codes again. I've got a bunch of them on that website, memorizingpharm.com/free books. So MedEd 101, if you're kind of thinking BCPS, if you're thinking APPEs and becoming competent really quickly, we've written 2 books, Pharmacotherapy and then Thrill of the Case, but this is the one most people usually start with. And what I did was, I didn't write it, he wrote it, I just made it for the ear. So when I worked with it, I made it so that it gives you a really good way of organizing how you present the medications. And when someone has 20 medications, your short-term memory can only hold 4 things at a time. So you have to chunk it in some way. And I have an order, gastrointestinal, musculoskeletal, and so forth, and you really get the feel for it by listening to it. And I think it's doing pretty well. So that's number 3,782 in Audible books, so still top 5,000. 100 Strong Residency Interviews, top 10,000. And Unicorn Jobs for Pharmacists, around just over 10,000, number 10,000. And then, well, Pharmacology one's always kind of crushing it. This is number 2,000 in the world, or in the country, in Audible books. So again, I really am concerned because of these numbers that the pharmacy school empire has continued to accept the same number of people each year for the last 4 years. There are fewer schools opening, but it's really survival right now. And if you don't, if as a pharmacy school you don't accept a certain amount of people, you can't keep the lights on. And I know they're going to have some very difficult decisions coming up as they get closer to 100%, because you can't obviously accept more than apply. But if you're looking for things to get better because the number of students goes down, I can tell you that that is not going to be the case. The people that are coming into pharmacy school are still very bullish on it. They still think it's a great profession. They still think that there are plenty of opportunities, and they still look at it as they still look at it as a path to a better life. And although the applicants have gone down 1,000 in the last 5 years, that's just not really a big drop at all. And as the schools are maintaining their number of people that they're taking, unfortunately, that's going to mean that the graduating schools, or the number of students that these schools graduate, will stay about the same for the next 5 years, regardless of how the job market goes. So again, expect the best, but plan for the worst. Please, please consider applying for a residency. It's a 50-50 shot. It's probably one of the best chances you have to get a job in pharmacy in some markets. And definitely start listening to some of those people in the Unicorn Jobs book. And if you really need help one-on-one with somebody, RX Ashley is someone that I really trust, and I think that getting into her group would be a really good thing as well. So anyway, pick up some of the free books over here if you want. And all you do is you go to memorizingpharm.com/free book codes, and then just kind of pick which ones you want. If you find that the book that you want isn't there, I'm going to be continually updating these. It's really kind of weird. I have to give away a certain number of books before I can get more. So I've maxed out on some of them, but I am still able to kind of grab some other books, and hopefully we'll be able to share those with you. As usual, if you have any questions for me, aaguerra@dmac.edu, aaguerra@dmac.edu, and I can hopefully answer some of the questions you have, or you can just hit me up on Facebook Messenger.
Support for this episode comes from the audiobook Memorizing Pharmacology, a relaxed approach. With over 9,000 sales in the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia, it's the go-to resource to ease the pharmacology challenge. Available on Audible, iTunes, and Amazon.com, in print, ebook, and audiobook. Thank you for listening to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. Be sure to share the show with the hashtag #PharmacyLeaders.